Wonderful. Ira Helfand, MD, is co-chair of Physicians for Social Responsibility's Nuclear Weapons Abolition Committee, and also serves as co-president of PSR's Global Federation, International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. Dr. Helfand has worked for many years as an emergency room physician and now practices internal medicine at an urgent care facility. And we really appreciate your taking the time away to do this interview, Dr. Helfand.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Diana.
Thank you so much. So I think the place to start is, why should we care about nuclear weapons and what's the current situation?
Well, I think we need to care about nuclear weapons because they pose an existential threat to our civilization. You know, it's so hard for us to believe that this wonderful world that we live in could come to an end. I'm here in Northampton, Massachusetts this morning. We just had a snowstorm. It's unbelievably beautiful outside. And when you look at it, that you can't believe that this could all go away. But the fact of the matter is that nuclear weapons threaten us in just that way. This could all go away. We now understand that the danger of nuclear war is greater than it has ever been. That's the assessment of experts like Secretary of Defense William Perry, former Secretary of Defense, the panel of experts at the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, who set their iconic doomsday clock last year to 100 seconds to midnight, the closest it's ever been. Nuclear weapons aren't in people's mind a lot. They're not a major focus of public discourse, but they are here. They threaten us every day. And we are essentially living on borrowed time and need to understand that. Even a very limited nuclear war, as might take place in between India and Pakistan, thousands and thousands of miles away from us here in the United States, a limited war there would cause enough climate disruption to cause a worldwide famine that would bring untold suffering, not just in South Asia, but here in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, in Russia, everywhere. And it would cause enough disruption of the global community to end civilization as we know it. And we have to make ourselves understand that. None of us believe that there could be a nuclear war. Even those of us like myself who talk about this all the time and know intellectually that we not only can have a nuclear war, but we will have a nuclear war if we don't change course. Still, none of us really believe this is going to happen. And that's the critical thing that we need to change. We need to get ourselves to that point of understanding, that point of fear, if you will, that will motivate us to take the necessary action to keep this from happening. Because this is not something that has to be our future. Nuclear war will happen if we don't take decisive action to prevent it, but we can take that action. Nuclear weapons are not a force of nature. We built them with our hands. We know how to take them apart. We just need to do that.
Wow, very powerful. And we know that we have something to celebrate. Tomorrow is the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Can you tell us, A, what that can do, and B, what we need to do to make sure that the action continues?
Yeah, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is one of the most hopeful developments of the last decades. It is the result of the countries in the world which do not have nuclear weapons coming together and telling the nuclear armed states, you cannot keep doing this. You cannot continue to hold our world hostage. The United States and the other nuclear armed states promised back in around 1970, when they signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, that they would engage in good faith negotiations to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. They haven't done it. And the rest of the world is fed up at this point. We threaten not only our own citizens, but all the peoples of the world. And they are telling us this is not an acceptable situation any longer. So this treaty enters into force tomorrow, January 22nd. It prohibits the possession of nuclear weapons, the development of nuclear weapons, the testing of nuclear weapons, funding other countries or other entities to build such weapons. It is a comprehensive prohibition on nuclear weapons. And it is now international, will be international law. And this is a reality that nuclear armed states like the United States have to face. What are they going to do now that the rest of the world is telling them it is time to get rid of your nuclear arsenal?
So, and we know that the US and the other nuclear nations have not signed on. Does that mean the treaty is powerless, or?
Not at all. This treaty obviously would be better if and when the nuclear armed states join the treaty. But even without their active participation, this treaty is creating a new norm in international life that says that nuclear weapons are not a status symbol. They're a mark that the countries that possess them are pariah states. There are treaties prohibiting the testing of nuclear weapons. The United States has signed that treaty, but it hasn't ratified it. We are not a party to that treaty, but we don't test anymore because there is such a global norm that has been created. Similarly, there are treaties on landmines and cluster munitions, which the United States has not signed. But we respect those treaties because the norm that has been created is so powerful that it would be unthinkable for the United States to start planting landmines again or start using cluster munitions again. Similarly, this treaty, even though it has not been signed and ratified by the nuclear armed states, is putting great pressure on them to respect this new prohibition. And we in the nuclear armed states, those of us living in the United States, can use this treaty to bring pressure on our government to do the right thing, to negotiate with the other nuclear armed states for the complete elimination of their arsenals so that all 9 nuclear armed states can in fact become parties to this treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons.
So what we have to do is put pressure on our government, but that sounds like a huge proposal. Do you have a way to break that down and give us some specific ideas that individuals and community groups can do?
Well, here in the United States, we've launched something called the Back from the Brink campaign, the call to prevent nuclear war. And this is a national campaign that is somewhat modeled on the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. There are over 300 organizations around the country which are participating now. More than 50 cities and towns have endorsed this campaign, and 6 state legislative bodies have as well. And the Back from the Brink campaign seeks to organize people to put that pressure on the US government. It calls on the US to enter now into negotiations with the other nuclear armed states for a verifiable, enforceable, time-bound agreement to completely dismantle their nuclear arsenals. And it calls on the US to take 4 interim unilateral steps that will lessen the danger of nuclear war as those negotiations proceed. It asks the United States to renounce the first use of nuclear weapons, to end the situation where the President of the United States has sole unlimited authority to launch nuclear war. It calls on the US to take its nuclear weapons off hair trigger alert, so they can't be launched by design or by accident in a matter of minutes. And it calls on the United States to renounce the plan to spend something like $1.7 trillion over the next 30 years to enhance every aspect of our nuclear arsenal. But the real heart of this campaign is the call on the US to begin now the negotiations to abolish nuclear weapons. This is not going to be an easy process, but we really don't have an alternative. We essentially are living on borrowed time. We've been incredibly lucky throughout the nuclear weapons era. As Robert McNamara said, we didn't survive because we had wise leaders or sound doctrine or infallible technology. We survived because we were lucky. And our luck, we just can't depend on our luck holding on forever. At some point, we're going to run out of luck. And so we don't have a choice. We need to begin these negotiations and we need to make them work. And I think we should not be pessimistic as we approach this task. You know, in the early 1980s, we all thought there was going to be a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War was characterized by incredible animosity and suspicion between the United States and the Soviet Union. And no one thought it was possible for them to sit down together and negotiate an agreement to stop the arms race. But they did, because we were able to convince, we meaning huge numbers of people, motivated and activated, were able to convince the leaders of both the United States and the Soviet Union that if they did not take action, horrible, terrible things were going to happen. And despite all the animosity, all the hostility, all the mistrust, they came together and said, we have a common interest here, and that's the preservation of our planet so that our children and grandchildren can live. And that's the message that our leadership in the United States needs to bring to the leadership of the other nuclear armed states. And I think it is something which President Biden and his new administration can do. They can declare unequivocally that the United States seeks the elimination of nuclear weapons, that we view this as our highest national security priority, and that we will sit down with the other nuclear armed states and figure out what it is that we all need to do to rid the world of these terrible weapons before they rid the world of us.
And I will just ask people to get involved. And I would say locally, if you happen to be in Syracuse, our mayor and our common council have already endorsed the Back from the Brink campaign. And we will be discussing this treaty further. But the treaty is part of the Back from the Brink campaign. So we are well on the road to getting local organizations. If you're in the Syracuse area, we'd love to get more local endorsements. We have 16 community organizations, congregations, community groups, peace groups, environmental groups endorsing Back from the Brink. And your group can endorse too. If you're not in the Syracuse area, check whether your area has a campaign. And you can also start one. You can go to preventnuclearwar.org and get lots of information on how to do this. In the Syracuse area, or if you would like advice from us, you can go to peacecouncil.net, and where it says campaigns, go to Nuclear Free Future and see how you can get involved, or email us at spc@peacecouncil.net. Thank you so much, Ira, and thank you for all the work you do in the world, both for health and for survival of the planet.
Well, thank you, Diane, for all the great work you and your colleagues in Syracuse are doing. It's really inspiring to watch. And thanks again.
Couldn't do it without you. All right, thank you.